Hello everybody and welcome to the 5th edition of What's New in Wagtail. Time sure flies when you're having fun because it feels like only yesterday that we were on episode 4. So as always, we've got a great lineup of speakers and lots of exciting demos to share with you today. For anyone who's new to these webinars, I'm Lisa and I head up our events at Torchbox. And today I am joined by Ben Enright, who is going to be making his What's New in Wagtail debut, and he is sharing some exciting updates on Wagtail's next generation editor experience. And he's joined by Matthew Westcott, who is sharing updates to admin history and a new StreamField block. We also have Mel, who it's her first time on What's New in Wagtail as well, and she is sharing the Wordpress or progress on the Wordpress to Wagtail migration kit. And as Tom mentioned earlier, we are joined today all the way from Australia by Albie, who is a member of the core Wagtail team, and he's going to be giving you a bumper update on the latest 2.15 release. We've also got a new addition to the lineup. Thibaut is joining us, and he's going to be giving some updates on accessibility front-end changes. And of course, but by no means least, we also have Tom Dyson, who is going to be the host today, helping to keep things running smoothly and answering questions, and also giving an exciting update on Wagtail Space. We've also got, you might see Dex is lurking in the background. He's not presenting today, but you'll see that he is online, and that's so that he can help with answering any additional questions that we have. So this is a webinar, so you can see us, but we can't see you, but we do want it to be interactive. So if you've got questions, if you can use the Q&A facility, you can use the chat as well. The Q&A just helps us to be able to field them a bit easier. And also, we're going to try and answer some throughout the session, but for any that we miss, we will have some time at the end for those. I am recording the webinar as well so that I can share it with you after. And that's about it from me. So I'm going to hand over now to Tom to get things going.
Thanks, Lisa. I just want to spend 2 minutes talking about the state of Wagtail, and really to say that Wagtail feels like it's in a very, very great place at the moment. There's 3 things that I want to draw your attention to. The first is that we've just had a release 2.15, and we're going to hear all more about that later from LB. And it's a packed release, and I feel like we always say this, that each release is the biggest yet. But 2.15 is a really big one. One of the things that I'm really happy about is that in this release, we're seeing the fruits of our amazing Google Summer of Code students. So we talked a bit about this in the last episode, but we had 3 fantastic students who helped push Wagtail forward. They were supported by a lot of mentors in the Wagtail community. And 2 of the big features in Wagtail 2.15 are the result of that program. So it's been wonderful to see. The second thing is that is about a metric that we've been focused on for the last few months. And we've always been pretty proud of our Wagtail, of the stars, the GitHub stars, but it's a slightly funny metric. That it's a kind of vanity thing, doesn't mean that much. The metric that we decided was more meaningful for us, it was around numbers of contributors. And we set ourselves in about August the target of hitting 500 contributors to Wagtail by the end of the year. And I'm really pleased to say that we accelerated and we hit 500 contributors about a month ago, so way ahead of target, and that number's still accelerating. Part of that, I think, is about Google Summer of Code, but also just about some of the changes we're making to try to make Wagtail more welcoming to the new contributors, and I'm really pleased about that progress. The last thing is news, but it's slightly I'm not going to give all the details of this because I don't think we're allowed to talk about it completely yet, but Wagtail has received the promise of some pretty significant funding, some sponsorship from a name who you would all know. And this is going to go towards some of the quite radical improvements that we have planned for the editor experience, some of which we're going to see now from Ben, who I'm going to hand over to.
Cool. Cheers, Tom. Yeah, so as part of our vision for the future of Wagtail is about editors, getting their best work done. So obviously that centers around the editor experience. So over the years, the editor experience has, it's evolved. The UI's evolved. We've added new features, and over the years, this has started to put quite a lot of stress on the UI, and inconsistencies have kind of occurred. a few years ago when we added workflows, we made some tweaks to the sort of header area. And we kind of realized at that point, it's probably time to take a more like holistic view of the UI and to kind of consider a bigger refactor. So we've actually taken the opportunity to work on some cool new concepts where we're trying to really create like a more unified UI that considers all the features as a whole, and also tackle some of those kind of known issues that have kind of cropped up over the years with the experience. And we also, as part of this work, want to show our commitment to accessibility. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump straight in to show you where we're trying to make some improvements to the editor and make the experience better. So here it is. It's going to look quite different to what you're used to, so I'm quite excited to talk you through all of the new features we've been exploring. So as we go through, so this is it. This is the new interface. And so basically, starting off, what are we doing to try and make things better? Well, we're trying to save space. So we've introduced this, what we're calling the slim sidebar here, which Albie, I think, we'll talk a bit more about later. But essentially, this gives us a bit more space to focus on the content editing. You'll also notice that we've gone for a much slimmer style header here. So it's smaller, but it's more functional. And we're trying to save vertical space by not having that large one that's starting to get a bit bloated with all those kind of features we were adding. So it still houses the breadcrumb. And also over here, we've got the tabs. And we've also got over here, we've got some functions that we've kind of grouped in these icons here, which I'll talk to you about a bit later. We're also embracing autosave, which should, encourage more collaboration and save that kind of need for people to continually worry about saving their work. But I guess kind of the big focus is on the content entry area. So this kind of area here where you kind of get into editing your content. As you can see, it's moved on quite a bit from what exists at the moment. So our original ambition here was to, try to hark back to our kind of, our original vision for Wagtail to be quite WYSIWYG, and so it feels like you're kind of a natural writing experience, which we love, and kind of more like the idea of things like Dropbox Paper or WordPress Gutenberg, which is great for kind of like long form writing and blog post stuff. But we wanted to explore if we can do that, but also kind of maintain that highly structured data kind of under the hood. And we explored that, and it's tricky to make that work when the data is highly structured. So what we think we've sort of landed on here is a balance, a kind of a hybrid between a fresher, cleaner UI for editing, but kind of works for the kind of more structured kind of data. So we're trying to focus on content rather than labeling and UI elements. So we're taking away, that in the old interface, there's quite a lot of elements that kind of make it difficult to see where you are. So what we're trying to do is take away that focus, making labels smaller and kind of making fields clearer so an editor can scan, because we can think this is the kind of thing they would actually scan for more than kind of labels. And this is particularly relevant in, say, StreamField areas. And we're also trying to reduce vertical spacing where we can in these kind of in these areas. For example, we're removing UI that doesn't need to be there until you're interacting with the element you're looking at, right? So at the moment, there's a lot of functions that kind of just sit there visible at all times, and we're trying to kind of find ways that give you the things when you need them. So here's a StreamField area, and you can see as I kind of focus in on any given StreamField block, it gives me these kind of dotted lines that anchor me to that particular StreamField that I'm looking at, and it brings in the functions that I might need. Also within things like rich text areas, we're trying to improve that and keep that cleaner and show things to people when they need them. So, originally we have a draft tail bar here, which has your kind of functions for rich text that's always visible. Well, we felt that perhaps that's not so relevant until you're perhaps highlighting text and you want to do some formatting. So kind of a similar sort of approach to things like Dropbox Paper or other systems. Also, for example, if you wanted to add in something in between these two paragraphs, you hit return, then it gives you the option to just start typing, or separating out from that bar things that you might insert, such as images or embeds and things like that. And another feature that we think is going to be really useful for people is the ability to split rich text areas. So say, for example, you're in StreamField and you need to bring something in between these two paragraphs. You can split this block now and then insert your StreamField block that you might want to put in between those two. And then a kind of final thing that we've developed as an idea here is the how we tackle this a kind of known issue in Wagtail where, you know, when you've got quite a lot of nested stream fields, you can start to get a little bit lost as to where you are. And we're exploring this idea where we're bringing in these kind of dotted lines, which are faint here because I haven't hovered on them yet, but they kind of show you this sense of indentation as you go deeper into nested stream fields. And then I've got this kind of little little animation here just to kind of show you how this could potentially work as you scroll past these elements. We're kind of giving you this idea of this stream field breadcrumb, which kind of gives you this sense of how deep you are. So you get a much clearer idea of when you're inserting something, at what point within that sort of nesting you're doing that. And then potentially these can then be anchored back up to the top of that section to help you kind of move around the page. Okay, so that's kind of some of the stuff we're working on in the kind of main focus of content entry, but there's some other elements we've explored as well, which we think are going to be really helpful for people, such as this element here on the right, which is this sort of page navigator to help you jump around the page. So it kind of indexes the kind of key top level fields or multi-field panels or stream field blocks, or even blocks within stream fields, so that you can kind of move around the page more easily. And then finally, going back up to the top, so obviously I mentioned the header stays with you, so it's always easy to get to functions that you might need to now. And we've got this group of elements over here on the right that will bring in things like your settings in a panel that comes in on the right-hand side. So we've moved settings into its own area now. And that slides in like this, and we're using this pattern for other things such as commenting as well, which would obviously, as you scroll, these would move with you, so you've got your contextual comments to different fields. We've also got this icon here that represents a future feature we'd like to work on, which centers around things like SEO guidance or inline writing coaching, that kind of thing. But probably the coolest element of this, we think, is this ability to have a live preview alongside your content entry. So as you scroll here, you can then anchor yourself to the actual front end of your page, so you can actually see the edits you're making in real time, which should really kind of speed up content production and hopefully reduce people making errors in their content writing. So yeah, we're really excited about this feature. Should make things really cool, and obviously this would kind of build in the ability to, you know, perhaps preview on different device sizes and that kind of thing. So I guess that's kind of, in a nutshell, the areas we've developed. And I think probably the final thing to mention is that we've kind of developed this kind of new palette, right? It's more pared back than we have at the moment. It's bringing in some fresher colours to move beyond the kind of grey shades of grey that we had before. And really, it's to try to just mark a sort of what we hope to be like a new era, really, in the editor experience in Wagtail. So that's me. Hopefully that's kind of exciting for you guys to see, and happy to take any questions if people have any thoughts. There's obviously a lot to take in, but yeah, we're excited about it.
Thank you, Ben. You probably haven't seen it yet, but there's a lot of very excited feedback in the chat. Cool. And yeah, lovely to see that you all seem really enthusiastic about it. I would say that you know, it's really nice for us to see that, but also what we really want to hear from you, any thoughts you have which are less enthusiastic, any points where you feel like we might be taking wrong direction, or we should consider other approaches. But yeah, I think this feels like a really big step forward, and we're really excited to roll this out with the help of the sponsorship that I mentioned before. We've got some questions coming in, one in the Q&A, a couple in the Q&A, and also in the chat. If people use the Q&A, it's just slightly easier for us to keep track of it, but I'm sure we can do it anyway. There was a question from Tom Reddings about whether or not the split is only within rich text. And the answer is yes. Our expectation is that's where it's useful. I can't think of cases where it'd be useful to split, and if it's not in rich text, maybe in kind of just plain text boxes as well. But I think rich text is where we're imagining this will be most useful, because that's generally the place where you decide kind of halfway down that actually you would rather have had an image or something and you want to split it up to keep it structured. I should say, I did say this in the notes, but that split feature was inspired by a demo that we saw from New York Public Radio, who showed us a proof of concept version of split. So we're grateful for them for that inspiration. We've got a question on, would live preview work with a headless version on Wagtail? And they already using Wagtail headless preview, which is great. And yeah, so this is, everything Ben showed, by the way, this is Figma. This is not, these are kind of well-developed mock-ups. This is not code yet. But yes, our expectation would be that we should be able to make this work on headless as well. And in fact, some of the mechanisms that make this possible with headless will actually make this job a bit easier for us. So the answer is yes, it will work for in a headless setup. In fact, I've just seen there's two people ask that same question. So it's good to see that's a common concern. We've got Helen asking about how accessible these changes will be, and imagining it might be hard to build some of these features with accessibility in mind. Thibaut, maybe you could answer that one.
Yep, just very briefly, I think it's worth saying the current features that we have aren't that good already, and there's quite a bit of room for improvement. So we'll definitely make the most of rebuilding this from the ground up to take that into account. I hope that makes sense.
Thanks, Thibaut. Another question that was been answered in the Q&A was about the readiness of the split StreamField feature, and we, as Phil answered, we are doing this hopefully in the short term for a big Wagtail user, and so that should be something that's ready to go fairly soon. I think that is one other question on accessibility from Christoph. Are the new features with mouse hovers, will they be keyboard friendly? Thibaut.
Very good question. So that's something we are working hard, keyboard friendliness of Wagtail, both for people who rely on this and also for power users. So very much so. The idea is that if you don't use a mouse and mouse over, the keyboard focus will condition whenever those things become visible.
Thanks, Thibaut. Keep questions coming. We'll try and answer in Q&A. But for now, we need to keep moving. Thank you for that, Ben. Over to Matthew.
Okay, so yep, I'm going to show you some updates to the logging capabilities within Wagtail. So since 2.10, we've had detailed logging capabilities for pages, as these were introduced as part of the moderation workflow feature in that release. And so if you, so this report, it's available through the site history link in the reports menu, and you can see this has got the sort of details of the edits, workflows, commenting, and Motley Fool have now sponsored the work to extend this to other model types. They're making extensive use of snippets and model admin for the content that's reused in multiple places. And when you have a data model that's sort of making sort of extensive use of those, then it's all just as important to be able to see who edited those those items and when. And so this is this has now been extended into 2.15. So we can, these are now part of the this site history report. So if I turn off the page filter there, you can see there's various so snippets and other items here. So I'm demonstrating this on the bakery demo example site that you're sort of hopefully familiar with, and so there's various snippets, and also I've been editing some user records. So it's, as well as editing the content, this is covering the more administrative side of running a Wagtail site. And all of the filters that were available for pages, we can now filter those too. So you can just look at edits to bread ingredients. So type edit changed by me within, say, the last week. And then you can see a few edits that happened there. And if I click through to these, this is all fully linked to the snippets and model admin area. And you'll see we've also added the sort of a history view, just like pages have, where you can sort of see, you can drill down into the edits that have been made to those models. But beyond these core areas of Wagtail itself, we wanted this to be sort of a full-fledged framework for logging that user code and third-party extensions could easily tap into. So we wanted to consider how we could make this available, sort of not just to these areas within Wagtail. And we did consider whether this could be something that happens automatically by monitoring changes at the database level. We decided against that at the end, as that would be missing some of the context behind the changes. We can log the fact that a new snippet is being created, but that will be missing out, say, the fact that it's being initiated by Wagtail localization as a translation of an existing one. So what we ended up with in the end is a setup where third-party packages can effectively just add logging to their apps just with a single line of code. Next to where their views are performing actions, it's just adding a log line with whatever information that the app needs to log. So yeah, we'd like to thank Motley Fool for sponsoring this feature. It's great to be able to provide these kinds of features that are expected and necessary on large-scale sites like theirs, and show that Wagtail is really up to the task of that sort of thing.
Okay. Thank you, Matthew. Short and sweet, but a lovely feature. Any questions on this? If you think of anything, then please keep them coming, and we'll try to answer. Thank you, Christoph, for saying that it looks splendid. I agree. And next up, we have Mel, who's going to talk to us about WordPress.
Hello. I'll share my screen. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Mel. I'm the delivery manager here at Torchbox. And I've been managing delivery of a new kit that we've been building, allowing the transfer of content from WordPress sites over to Wagtail. So a bit of background as to why we decided to do this. It's been kindly sponsored by the Motley Fool, and they wanted to migrate 6 of their own WordPress sites over into Wagtail. And we agreed that what would be most beneficial is if we created something that was open source to reduce the time spent on migration of content as far as possible. So to give you just a little bit of context on the timeline where we've been delivering this, so we've been developing broadly from August through to October. At the moment we're in testing with Motley Fool, and hopefully we'll have something to deliver potentially shippable around Christmas this year. So how will it work? Well, I'd encourage you to sign up to This Week in Wagtail, which is a newsletter. You can sign up on wagtail.io, and that will let you know when you're ready to get your hands on this kit, and you can transform your WordPress site into a thing of Wagtail beauty. Then you'll need to spin up your own Wagtail instance and install the Wagtail WordPress import package from PyPy, and you can add that to your site settings in Wagtail. Then what you'll need to do is to configure your fields from your WordPress site and map them to what your Wagtail site fields will be. And this will determine which parts will become things like the header field or a title field or even a StreamField block in Wagtail. And then within WordPress, you can download the whole XML file of your WordPress site in the admin section. And this is what the kit will use to get all the data ready to be imported into Wagtail and do the content import. And then what you'll need to do is run the import. So how does that importer work? Well, this is where all the magic happens behind the scenes. The importer will run through your XML dump of your WordPress site and it will decode it. Then it will clean up all of your non-standard HTML, and it turns it into something that can be understood and output correctly within your Wagtail site. This is where the kit can be extended. So if you know that you have something non-standard, then you can modify the kit and run it. Okay, so now what will happen is the import will create pages and any related metadata that's associated with that. So there'll be things like page status from draft and live, publish dates, or even your page type, so blog and report, for example. And at this point, your pages will exist in your Wagtail site, but they'll have one large long block of HTML with no structure. So then the importer will split those blocks of HTML into separate blocks, depending on what the content is. So the kit will identify where each chunk of content starts and ends and splits them accordingly. So at this point now, your pages will have Wagtail pages and lots of little blocks, chunks of content, but they're still raw HTML. Then it will convert it into actual real life blocks using the initial mapping that you used at the start. So quite often people use something called shortcodes on WordPress sites. So they're small pieces of code that can do things quite easily without you having to modify the theme or do any actual proper development. And they can be anything like a date added to a page or audio files or even an image gallery. So what will happen is that the importer will identify those shortcodes and then they'll turn them into the Wagtail blocks for you, whether that's rich text content or whatever it is that you've designated, so within your created pages. So now you'll be able to debug that. And so every single page that you have will have a debug tab, as you can see in this screenshot. And that will allow you to see where the errors were. So you can also amend the kit, extending the areas that you feel it hasn't picked up on for the specific requirements of your site. Okay, so here's a couple of facts. So you can make amendments to your WordPress site and then run that kit again with your new XML dump. That won't actually duplicate any content or anything. It will just look for where there are changes and modify your Wagtail site as it sees fit. So the pages are imported to a single parent page, so it will be a flat structure. So if you had any sort of page trees or anything, you'll need to create manual scripts and run those to recreate your old structure. And your common WordPress content is handled out the box, so things like paragraphs and headings, but all of your WordPress sites will have lots of unique quirks. So that's why we've made the kit quite extendable. So that's it from me, but hopefully people will find this really exciting, really useful, and we're excited to share it with the world, hopefully soon.
Thanks very much, Mel. We've had more questions coming in about different parts of the presentation so far. There was a question from Fabian that's been answered by Phil, but worth repeating here, I think. The question is whether or not it is going to download images embedded in WordPress posts, and the answer is that yes, it will. Both posts that are kind of images that are standalone, and also those which are embedded in rich text. So yeah, that's being handled, and yeah, I hope this will help a big selection of users who are on WordPress, maybe have a lot of content and worried about the migration costs, but are keen to move to Wagtail. And the existence of this tool should make their lives much easier. Any other questions? David's asked if there's a link to the presentation for sharing with colleagues, and yeah, we'll share this whole video, but also I'm sure Mel can share her particular presentation. We'll send out some links on all of this at the end. Fabian asks if we are planning to support WordPress, the JSON API as well. I don't know the details of this, but to my understanding, it looks like Phil is going to answer this part. So I'll let him answer that in the Q&A. Okay, and thank you for the questions. Keep them coming. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Thibaut.
Thank you, Tom. Hi, everyone. I'm Thibaut. I thought this would be a lovely occasion to give you an update on what our accessibility team has been up to. This is quite critical to the future of Wagtail as we see it. And it's been lovely to see how many questions we've had today about accessibility. I want to start with a quick announcement. A new page on the wagtail.io website at wagtail.io/accessibility. This is our official accessibility statement. And there is no legal requirement for us to have such a statement, but it essentially shows that we are trying to follow the best practices from the compliance sector in the UK and in Europe as well as best practices around the whole field of content management. This statement essentially follows the same content that we've had on our developer documentation for quite a bit now, but there are a few changes I want to call your attention towards. The first thing is that for standards, it mentions a standard you might not have heard of before called ATAG 2.0 at the AA level. ATAG is an accessibility standard that's specific to authoring tools such as Wagtail. We've been keeping track of it for quite a bit of time, and I believe this is the very first time we make a commitment towards complying with ATAG publicly. And what's really cool about ATAG is that it mandates not just that the interface of the CMS is accessible, but that it also caters towards the production of accessible content, which is quite critical for sites that actually have a compliance target for their front end as well, such as the PSPAR regulations in the UK. And I think beyond the standards, it's also very important for us to be open about the fact that even though we have those compliance targets, we definitely aren't there for the whole of Wagtail at the moment. Wagtail is quite a big system. So we also have links to pointing at the known issues we're aware of. And the idea is that this page will be kept up to date over time. So people who do need this compliance are aware of where we are in the journey. And finally, I think it's also interesting that it points out which steps we actually take in the accessibility team and beyond towards making Wagtail accessible. So I'll let you read this at your own rhythm later. And for now, I think it's interesting for me to give you actual demos of how we've improved Wagtail over time to introduce support for different ways to use the CMS, essentially. So my first demo is a change we've released in Wagtail 2.14 with the user bar control you can see in the bottom left. Sorry, right. Since Wagtail 2.14, this user bar control has screen reader and keyboard support.
VoiceOver on Safari. Wagtail Demo Bakery Home window.
So here I've just opened my screen reader, which is VoiceOver in Safari, and I'll move over to this component.
View Wagtail Quick Actions. Menu pop-up collapsed button.
And I can see it's announced as a menu pop-up collapsed button. So this is quite important for people who rely on screen readers to use Wagtail, that those components are reachable, that they are announced in the right way, and that they support the keyboard interactions that those users expect.
Go to Wagtail Admin, menu item, view Wagtail Quick Actions group. You are currently on a menu item. To choose this menu item, press Control Option.
So in this case, since the component is coded as a menu, my screen reader will automatically tell me which shortcuts I can use to interact with it. And I can move from
Show and explore, edit this page, menu item.
And
view Wagtail Quick Actions.
Close it, of course. And this isn't something we had in the past. And this is exactly the type of thing we're trying to achieve from release to release, incremental improvements so that no matter how you use Wagtail, you can leverage all of its features. And again, this is both screen reader support and also keyboard support in this case. And this is in Wagtail 2.14. I have another demo in the same vein, which is something that's yet to be released, but we're targeting Wagtail 2.16. This is, again, screen reader and keyboard support for the main navigation menu in Wagtail. Again, this is something that's quite critical for people who do rely on keyboards to use Wagtail, and also very good for power users. So in this case, I'll simply tab through the different parts of the menu, and I can see I can move through it in logical order. My focus isn't getting lost inside any one of those submenus. And something that is quite close to my heart is being able to use these very bottom menu buttons, which weren't keyboard accessible at all in the past. So again, for the purpose of sighted users, there isn't much of a change here, but behind the scenes, how this is actually working is quite a big change for us. And we intend to roll out keyboard support of this nature for all of the new features in Wagtail, obviously, such as the page editor that Ben has demoed, as well as the existing features that have been implemented in the past. And again, in a similar fashion, I want to demo yet another way of using Wagtail that we've worked on towards supporting, which is Windows high contrast mode. So you might not have heard of Windows high contrast mode before, right now I'm demoing it inside a tool called Assistive Labs. They've been very generous to support our project, so we can use their software to test Wagtail. And Windows high contrast mode is a setting that I have available inside Windows for the whole of my computer. I can turn it on, and it's going to apply a high contrast theme to the whole of the operating system, as well as everything I use my browser to access, such as the CMS. So if I head back over to Wagtail, I can see it has this high contrast mode applied. If you've never seen a high contrast mode before, this might look very foreign to you, but for people who rely on this to actually use the web, the colors that are used here are very important, and they essentially denote the type of interaction people can expect with different parts of the UI. So this is something that we'd like to support, and we have released this in Wagtail 2.15, thanks to contributions from a project called Hacktoberfest, which happens over the whole of October. And we've had a lot of pull requests from lots of different contributors coming towards improving our high contrast mode support. So obviously, again, Wagtail is quite big. We are still working towards improving the support throughout all of it, but we believe it's already in a shape where we are definitely keen for people to rely on it, and if there is any hard corners, for them to be raised to us as issues. But yeah, definitely more coming for keyboard support, screen reader support, and high contrast mode support in the upcoming releases as well. And that's me.
Thank you, Thibaut. So great to see all this. And as Koen said in the comments here, the kind of really interesting thing about accessibility is that I think it's easy for people to think about it as a sort of extra job, but actually we shouldn't think of it as something extra. And also it makes Wagtail better for everyone. And I feel that more and more as the accessibility changes come in. If there are any questions, please keep them coming in the Q&A. Thank you for all the feedback that you're sending. For now, I'm going to move on and hand over to LB.
All right, brilliant. How you doing? So we're just going to talk about some of the epic fun and great new things we've got in Wagtail 2.15. So this came out last week, and one of the great things to note about it is it's a long-term support release, which means that for the next 12 months, we'll support any major breakages, any database issues, anything major that's encountered. So it's a great time to upgrade, and it's a great time to get on the latest version of Wagtail. The other thing that's been a work in progress is the support for Django 4.0. Obviously that's not out yet, but there's lots of work behind the scenes to make sure that that should be pretty seamless for users. And we've also integrated in this release Python 3.10, and under the hood, jQuery 3.6, that's just a small update. And the tooling that's used to work on Wagtail, we've upgraded that to Node 14. One thing that's dropped in this release is IE11 support. So that is in the editor. That's not obviously for your users. If you're producing content with Wagtail, but the editor itself will no longer support IE11. It will still kind of work now, but over time it will break more and more. All right, so first we want to talk about some of the features that relate to one of our pillars, which is editors get your best work done. We really want to build an interface where our CMS users, not the developers, can have a great experience and just get their work done well. One of the small features that's come in is in model admin in the header. You can see on the left the old version and on the right the new version. We have a little call out to how many or any model that you've got listed in model admin. So you can see they're 4 out of 25, and it'll also show you the total in comparison with what you've searched. So it's just a small improvement, but makes it a lot easier when you're navigating big lists of items in model admin. The other great feature we've got in 2.15, and this is one of the Google Summer of Code features, is bulk actions. So you can see here on the images page, there's a little checkbox next to each image, and that will let you select more than one image at a time and perform bold actions. So you can tag, add to collection, delete. You can even select the checkbox as a whole, which will select everything on that same page, which is really useful. And it will even work when searching. So if you're, let's say you're filtering out all the images of the coffee, you can search for coffee and then select them all and then add them all to a collection. So it's a really powerful feature. That same feature, bulk actions, is available on page listings and document listings. So this is a really incredible feature for users when you've got lots of pages and you want to, I don't know, let's say you've got an entire branch of pages, you need to move them to another area of the site. You can do that in bulk now. You can publish, unpublish, move, and of course you can register custom actions if you want to. We've alluded to this feature a bit. It is not an official feature yet. It's not officially released, but it's good to mention that if you want to play around with it, you can turn it on. So you can see at the bottom there, we've got Wagtail experimental features. So this is something on the left, you can see the sidebar is expanded, and on the right, you can see it's contracted. So this gives your editors lots of room for activities, lots of room for comments and whatever other content they want to work on. And then once you move your mouse over, it will expand again. So that's really great. And then some other highlights. We won't go into too much detail, but there's a lot in this release. When copying a page, it will no longer default to auto-publish, which is something that will hopefully help a lot of people. Task Chooser has been improved. It will no longer show disabled tasks. And a bunch of improvements to layouts for things like comments for different languages and for checkboxes when you've got big lists of checkboxes or radio buttons. All right, so the next pillar we want to talk about is sophistication without compromising simplicity. We want Wagtail to work really great out of the box, but as you use more and more features or turn more and more things on within Wagtail, those features become visible or become usable, but they don't hinder the initial experience. So one of those features is the ability to manage permissions of collections at a subtree level. Not everyone will use this feature, not everyone will need it, but if you want it, it's there. And if you've got complex nested collections of images or documents, you can now manage the permissions of that at every level, which is really powerful. All right, on top of that, you can see on the left when you've uploaded a file, it's got the file extension in the name. And on the right, when you uploaded the file, there is no file extension. So this will be the default behavior for images and documents wherever you upload them. And it's just a small improvement just, to help your users not have to remove that file name extension from the automated title. On top of that, you're actually able to customize that. That's in the documentation if you want to change that behavior. All right, the other thing we've got for object permissions, on the left, you can see that the other permissions for models with, more than just add, change, delete, they are listed in a bottom table in 2.15. The other permissions are listed alongside the actual model they apply to. And again, this is one of those features, if you're using it in your Wagtail instance, it will appear. If you're not, you won't see that column. So that's really helpful. Lots of other improvements. We won't go through all of these, but lots of improvements to search backends. Make sure you read the documentation. But one of the great things is that text search is now supported in most databases. So you no longer have to go straight for Elasticsearch if you want to do some basic search features. A lot of that is supported out of the box with Postgres and other databases that we support. We've also made some improvements to how autocomplete search type works. We've talked about audit logging. There's some improvements to the breadcrumbs. If you've got complex user permissions, they will only show the right kinds of breadcrumbs as enabled, and lots of other fun things there. Right, moving on, multi-channel experiences. So we really want to make sure that Wagtail supports output that's not just a website. You might be using the content in apps, in APIs, in other languages, and using the CMS data for even things that aren't really content presentation. So we've got lots of new, more powerful ways to consume and manage content. So translations have been improved. So there's automatic tree synchronization if you're running Wagtail simple translation and you want to manage content across different pages. Excel reports will now, it's small, but it really helps. The date format for date columns in Excel will now match the user's locale. We've pulled out a whole bunch of mix-ins for image file handling. So this will really help for APIs like Grapple that want to work with images in more complicated ways. And we've also put some enhanced debugging for image rendition generation. Obviously, if you're doing lots of complicated things with outputting images to different interfaces, you want to really understand what's happening under the hood if you're running into issues. All right, Wagtail as a platform. So on top of all of this, we want to make sure that our Wagtail developers can really build what they want and build it easily. So one of my personal favorite features, it's one I wanted for a long time, and we actually had a first-time contributor, a group of 3 people that are learning the program actually put this improvement in, and it was really great. So what we can, on the left, you can see you've got an inline panel. So we've got a list of venues. Previously, you couldn't have events listed under those venues. You could do it with StreamField or StreamBlock, but you couldn't do it with inline panel. On the right, you can see we've actually got nested inline panels. So this is a really powerful feature, and it means that you don't necessarily have to reach straight for StreamField if you want to have more control over your data model in actual, database models, not just in JSON. All right, lots of other improvements to Wagtail as a platform. One of the big sort of general themes is lots and lots of work done by the incredible Matt to make Wagtail easier to build admin views. So a lot of the views now use centralized classes that are all actually built on the Django default classes or the Django, class-based views, which is really powerful. This includes model admin, documents listing, image listing, and the other big improvement is a clean and consistent approach to components. So a component might be on the dashboard where you want to have a little widget that shows you, the recent edits or something specific about that user. There's now a much more improved approach to building those and rendering content across the admin as a whole. So lots of great things there. Improvements to workflows, and also one of the big things is the commenting system can now work a lot easier with other systems of commenting. That you can use a different field name so you won't get conflicts. Brilliant. And finally, we just want to make sure that the first 30 minutes of Wagtail is really, really easy for developers when they're first getting their head around Wagtail and getting started. So a lot of that comes down to documentation. We've done some work to pull out a lot of the more advanced features of Wagtail into a section called Extending Wagtail. So this is a lot clearer for users that are just getting started. They won't necessarily need to go to this, but once they do, it's all in one section. And more code examples across the board, including areas like model admin and routable page mixin. So yeah, that's all of that. We'll go to questions.
Amazing, LB. Thank you very much. It's really nice to see again all the positive feedback. Even things which might look small, like file extensions, the removing extensions when we automatically create file names. That's obviously means something to some of you, and it's great that all these niggles are being gradually smoothed over. I really want to thank LB, not just for staying up till 10 o'clock at night to join us in this presentation, but for the work he's done on Wagtail, particularly in the last couple of releases, where if you look on the commits and the pull requests and issues, you'll see LB's name come up a lot. And in particular, I think he's been super helpful with the goal I mentioned at the start of this about hitting our targets of increasing our contributor numbers. LB has really helped with people who are working on Wagtail for the first time and encouraging them and getting through that first step. And we're really grateful for that, LB. Thank you. All right, I think we're nearly at the end. We're going to have Matthew one more time to tell us about table block.
Okay, yeah. So StreamField has had a table content type for a while now, as just a simple one that allows plain text content, no formatting, anything like that. And that limitation was to some extent a deliberate design decision. The library that we're using under the hood here, hands-on table, does have HTML support, but Wagtail, of course, already has a rich text implementation in the form of the Wagtail editor that we spent a long time refining in terms of security, usability, data consistency, so that we're storing internal links as IDs rather than just as plain links. And so there's been a lot of work that's gone into that, and we didn't just want to introduce a new way of doing rich text that had none of that. So this has been sort of a bit of a missing feature for some time. And when YouGov asked for sort of better support for rich content inside tables, they were by no means the first people to ask for that, but they just happened to ask at the right time. You might remember that, yeah, for those of you who have been in previous What's New in Wagtail sessions, that we've recently completed Telepath, which was a rewrite of the StreamField editing interface that gives us more flexibility in how we work with blocks in front-end code and where they can appear. And that means that inserting new blocks is just like one JavaScript call. It's no longer an elaborate dance between Python and JavaScript code like it used to be. And so that's given us a new perspective on what's possible with StreamField blocks. And with that in mind, we thought, well, yeah, what's to stop us from now putting the Wagtail editor inside a table, or for that matter, doing that with any other StreamField block type. So that's brought us to a new kind of table block where you can sort of define columns of various different types. And as a developer, you can define this list of available types just in the same way that you would define the list of blocks available within the StreamField itself. So let's do sort of a couple of like book reviews or something. So if we have, so this is just a plain text field. Now if we add a rich text column, so now you see we've got the full Wagtail editing controls there. So we can we've got formatting and inserting links and anything else you wanted from rich text there. But again, it's not just it's not just rich text and Wagtail that we can use for this. So any valid StreamField block type is possible. So here we've got a date field, and that's using the standard date picker that appears in any other StreamField block. Let's add a bit more data here. And again, because it's not just limited to Wagtail, but Wagtail's built-in blocks. This can be any blocks of any complexity. And the only real limit is the user interface, really. But it's as with the rest of StreamFields, of nesting things at any depth is possible. So now we can see that being presented as a table on the front end. So this way we've got all the capabilities of the rich text and being able to lay things out more into more interesting ways, but it's still firmly keeping track of the underlying data. So this is all very, very much data driven. And this is something that is going to grow with the new design work that, such as Ben has shown, where the rather than having this toolbar available all the time. It's more context specific and will sort of get out of your way. And we've already sort of had some great contributions from Scott on the core team to improve the user interface accessibility. So this is it's already we're sort of seeing this getting refined over time. So again, we'd like to thank YouGov for sponsoring this feature. This was part of some Wagtail consultancy work we were doing with them this summer. And it's always great when these things can be spun off to benefit the wider Wagtail community as well.
Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, YouGov. We are nearly at the end of our session now, so I'm just going to race through the last part. If you do have questions, please keep them coming in Q&A and we'll try and answer them there. But I just want to talk quickly about Wagtail Space, which is our big in-person event. And meeting people and our community in person has always felt like something we've cherished as part of the Wagtail community. And we've had lots of amazing sessions right from the start, from South Africa and then Iceland and the UK, the Netherlands and the US. We had a big online event last year, Wagtail Space online, which was really good. It was, loads of people turned up, but it's we miss seeing you all in person. So we're really happy that as long as the kind of the global situation makes it possible, that we're going to meet. We're going to have a big event in the US next year in March. We've been very lucky that in previous years, our US events have been sponsored by Wharton, who have incredible facilities and very well set up in Philadelphia. And I think they would have generously offered that us again. But this time we also had the offer of sponsorship from Code Red, who some of you may know through their open source distribution of Wagtail called Code Red CMS, which is a really interesting kind of WordPress-like product on top of Wagtail. And they're a really important part of the Wagtail ecosystem. And they're based in Cleveland, Ohio, and that's where they have offered to host us in the beautiful Cleveland Public Library. So we're hoping to have that in March 2022. The other thing that's clear to us is that while it'd be great to see people in person, we want to make it possible for everyone to attend this. So for those of you who've joined this meeting, that probably means you're not on a kind of a East Coast US friendly time zone, but we will make this a session that means that everyone can attend remotely and also participate remotely. So we want speakers as well as attendees who are not able to be there in person. But yeah, we're really looking forward to that. Grateful to Code Red for their sponsorship, and there'll be more details about this coming very soon. With that, I think we should probably wrap up. I don't know if there's any last minute questions. I think we're probably out of time, but if there is anything that hasn't been answered, we will try to follow up in Lisa's notes, which she'll send out after the second session, which is on Thursday, and along with the recording of this talk. Thank you all very much. Thank you for my co-presenters, and thank you all for joining.